Software development, like many other disciplines, has several patterns that repeat over and over. In this chapter, we look at what patterns make a problem Hadoopable. We'll look at general constraints that Hadoop imposes. We'll look at types of analyses that are possible. And we'll take a look not only at general ways that Hadoop can be used, but share some very specific use cases along with real numbers showing the benefits achieved by real companies. First of all, you really shouldn't even consider using a system like Hadoop unless you have a whole bunch of data or a whole bunch of different types of data. For example, if all of your log files can fit into one single machine, you should process them in that one single machine. Hadoop's architecture is a batch processing architecture. That means that whatever data analysis we're trying to do needs to be parallelizable. We need to be able to break the data up and process it across several different nodes. Some workloads, for example, like crawling graphs, we know do not work exceptionally well in a distributed fashion. Hadoop can do a lot of different types of analyses. For example, recommendation engines, like we see on Amazon. Index building, like we see with the Nutch project or on Google. Text mining and pattern recognition, for example, to go in and find where certain parts of our system are erroring. Doing things like risk assessment or threat analysis for financial or national security reasons. Doing things like predictive analysis, or maybe finding out which products will sell better if the temperature goes above 100 degrees in a certain area. Doing things like fault or error detection, for example, being able to tell in a complex system if one specific piece of software or hardware is causing cascading failures throughout the entire system. In the coming slides, we're going to look at some of the common use cases around recommendations, specifically with Yelp and with the volunteer direction of the 2012 presidential campaign. We'll look at ad targeting with AOL. We'll look at fraud detection, the example here being Zions Bank Corporation. And we'll look at image processing, the example here being the New York Times machine. I also very highly recommend reading Jeff Hammerbacher's 10 Hadoopable Problems, which you can find a link for in the appendix to this chapter. First up, Yelp. Yelp is probably the #1 online resource for dining and entertainment recommendations. They process 400 gigabytes of logs per single day. They use Hadoop for nearly everything. For example, search recommendations. Here, as I started typing find tacos, it actually did a look ahead on the spelling to be able to quickly provide recommendations for my search. Users who viewed this also viewed something else recommendations, such as we see here. As I zoomed in and found a single restaurant, I see that other users' recommendations for similar restaurants appear. Spelling correction. For example, in this case, I misspelled tacos, but they quickly corrected it for me. Doing review highlights or quick looks of other reviews that folks gave for a certain restaurant, and obviously doing things like advertisements. Yelp is a heavy user of Hadoop, and it provides all of these things on their site and other similar sites. Many say that one of the primary reasons that Obama won re-election in 2012 was their ability to use big data to the campaign's advantage. The big data division of Obama's campaign was headed by this gentleman, Raeed Ghani, their chief scientist. In previous lives, he had analyzed data for organizations like supermarkets who were trying to up their sales. One of the big things they did was run analysis to determine their fundraising efforts. For example, they ran a Sarah Jessica Parker contest when they realized that a lot of folks liked the actress and liked Obama, the winner of who got to have dinner with Sarah Jessica Parker. They also organized volunteers to call and visit those most likely to be influenced to vote for Obama. They merged multiple lists such as donation, demographic, consumer, and voter registration, and they predicted who would most likely sway who based on the age, the sex, the online status, and so forth of the person calling. They also estimate that their ad buying was 14% more efficient than the Romney campaign. Hadoop is frequently also used for ad targeting. In this example, we'll talk about Razorfish. They ran a big box retailer cross-product ad campaign. This big box retailer was trying to sell more sports-related video games, and what they did was look at users who had recently purchased a sports-related movie and put sports-related ads in front of them. They had to process 3.5 billion records across 71 million unique user cookies and target 1.7 million ads per day. By putting more relevant ads in front of users who were likely to buy in much faster time than the previous solution, Hadoop was able to increase the return on ad serve by 500%. Fraud detection is another area that Hadoop is used frequently, and here we'll look at how Zions Bank used Hadoop. Zions Bank, a $54.6 billion bank, has been running Hadoop in production since 2011. They have 130 different data sources, and they use Hadoop for detecting fraudulent transfers in and out of customer accounts, detecting phishing attempts, and detecting account takeover attempts. Before using Hadoop, they had to be careful about how much data they would use in our system because the storage and processing was expensive. They also had to perform expensive ETL to massage the data into required formats. For image processing, there's probably no better example than the New York Times Machine. New York Times Machine is an online resource that lets purchasers of New York Times go back and browse any article ever created from the paper. It lets users mouse over individual parts of that article and bring up details about the article in that page. A single individual at New York Times converted 400,000 TIFF images combined with 3.5 million SGML articles and 400,000 XML files into 800,000 individual PNG images, 400,000 JavaScript files, essentially making every article of the New York Times now mouseable. He did this all for the cost of a few $100s in just under 36 hours. Pretty incredible. When you're considering using Hadoop for something inside of your company, just realize it's probably been done before. If you're looking to do something with Hadoop, Google around first to see what other users have done. Many times you'll often find fully functioning code, or at least a description of the hurdles that individuals encountered and how they got around them. In this chapter, we looked at Hadoopable problems, the general constraints, the type of analyses possible, and both general and detailed use case information.